Big movie. Well, I mean, Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, and then Bojesse Christopher.
He leaves the room. He comes back 2-3 minutes later with Catherine Bigelow. And he goes, do that again. So I did it again. She goes, you're hired. Gary Busey used to chase me around the set and like literally like give me wedgies. And so Keanu says, come to Rainbow and I says, come in my trailer and let's drink beers. We were all hanging out. It was, Robert Gavin,
Yep.
Brian Austin Green,
Yep.
Porky,
Yep.
Baltazar Getty,
Yep.
Jenny Lewis, Soleil Moon Frye,
Yep.
Dave Faustino, Rainbow, you,
Yep.
me.
Welcome to another episode of 90who10. I am your host, Jessica Entner, and this is my co-host,
Dan Eisenstein.
And today we have one of those faces that you will absolutely recognize if you go back and watch a couple movies. We have Bojesse Christopher. Sitting in with us.
Yep.
Thank you for having me.
Star of
Yep.
Point Break.
Yep.
It's my absolute pleasure to be here and feeling grateful.
Well, we are really happy to see you because it's been a while.
It has been
It's been a long while.
It's been a minute, as
Yeah.
we used to say. Yeah.
We're adults now. There are children involved.
There are children involved.
Yeah.
Lots of them.
Yeah.
Actually.
Oh.
In fact, let's just kick it off.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that like in our whole generation of people that we want to talk to, have been talking to, et cetera, that I was the first friend to have a kid.
How old's your kid?
30.
Whoa. Whoa. You are not
Yeah.
old enough to have a
Did we know
30-year-old.
about this?
Yeah.
How
What?
is that possible?
Yeah. So, okay. I mean,
You had a
this is all
child when I
vaguely coming
graduated
back.
from high school, so you had a kid when I knew you.
so this is like the cold
Holy fuck.
open tease to this interview. And then we'll circle back leading up to that moment. But yeah.
You know, eventually,
He's so
eventually-
proud. He's like,
you know,
I knocked someone up first.
Uh,
I'm just kidding.
You know the scene in the 40-Year-Old Virgin where you're like, so your girlfriend has a kid who has a kid? That's going to be Bojesse soon.
Yeah.
Yeah. You have a
Oh,
kid who has a
fuck.
kid?
Any day now. I mean, not literally, but
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
it
Yeah.
could be. Like I've got 2 younger kids, so
Mhm.
I'm in no real rush. My relationship with my kids is just my life. It's my everything. I feel like I could just, I could call it
awesome.
a day.
So I actually, you were around when Bojesse moved here. Like
So
you met him first. So let's-
Bojesse grew up in the Bay Area, right?
Okay.
Yeah, San
Yeah.
Francisco,
Yeah.
Pacifica.
Right, right. Which is just outside of San Francisco.
It's
But it's like a
gorgeous.
beach town. It's
Yeah.
gorgeous.
Let me
It's
get
like-
that right, because anybody listening who I grew up with is going to be like, dude, get it right.
Yeah.
So born and raised in San Francisco.
Okay.
When I was 8 years old, moved to Pacifica. Did you
Yeah.
ever go to Pacifica?
I've been through Pacifica.
Okay, because
Yeah.
you probably
Actually-
went with Dave, right? When Dave took the
So
trip?
Dave Faustino.
Yep.
No, so actually it's funny. I went to college for a year at a school called Menlo, which is
Yeah.
right next to Stanford. And we have a very good friend in common, Clint Engler,
Yep.
who lives still in Pacifica.
Yep.
And Rainbow, who's also a good friend of ours,
Absolutely.
Rainbow Borden,
Yep.
who is also in Point Break. He's going to
Yes.
be mad if we don't mention that.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah. And I'm sure you helped him out get that role.
Yeah, I brought him with me,
yeah,
and I
yeah.
basically made Catherine Bigelow put him in the movie.
Yeah, well, he has
Literally.
he has a great memorable scene in the movie. Tell us about riding the big waves, Gromit.
Right.
Yeah,
Fully.
yeah.
I mean, can I just tell that story?
Sure,
real
yeah,
quick? But
yeah.
basically, I'm doing this film, Point Break, with
Yeah.
Patrick Swayze and Keanu Reeves. More on that, right?
Yeah.
But I bring Rainbow to the set one
Yep.
day because we're going to shoot this party scene. And I want to get him in the movie. I
Yep.
want him to say something because he's awesome, And so we're doing this scene, and there's a bunch of people in the scene, and I remember they're blocking the scene, and I've got a bunch of fun things to say around the campfire, and people are shaking beers at me. And I remember like earlier in the day, I get to set. Gary Busey used to chase me around the set and like literally like give me wedgies, and
He's still chasing people around. I don't know if
That
it's
sound totally on brand.
Anyway.
I love Gary, but Gary used to terrorize me. So I was like, Rainbow, we got to stay in my trailer. I can't be out there because Gary will chase me
Yep,
down
yep.
and do something obnoxious to me. So I would hide from Gary, and Rainbow's in there. So Keanu says, come to Rainbow and I says, come in my trailer and let's drink beers.
Oh, okay, I love it.
So we're drinking beers all day
Yep.
with Keanu,
Yep.
Coronas. And it's finally dark and it's time to shoot this thing. And so we kind of, all three of us, Keanu, me, and Rainbow, we stumble down to set. They're blocking the scene. I've got pretty much all the things to say in this particular moment. And I'm like, this is my best friend. I want him right next to me. I want him doing something in the movie. Like he's a great dancer. He's creative. His brain is so smart. Please just trust me. Roll the camera on him. Put him in the frame. And then, you know, he's in every scene that I could squeeze him into, in every frame in that whole sequence. And
by the
he
way,
should have been in more of the movie.
That's a good friend, because I'm just going to talk about what's going on there. I mean, because I've known you for a long time. Yeah. I met you on the set of Pump of the Volume.
Yes.
You were an extra on Pump of the Volume.
Yes.
And now you are like co-starring in this big movie. Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, Patrick Swayze, Keanu Reeves, and then Bojesse Christopher.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
basically
that's a long distance to go.
Huge.
In a very short period of time.
Yeah. How did I get there?
Well, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna talk about that.
Get to here?
There's a good story.
But the fact that you're willing to now, because most people in that situation would be like, I don't want to fuck this up.
Yeah.
I don't want to draw too much attention to myself. I want to just draw the right amount of attention to myself, the positive, not, hey, put my friend in the movie too.
Right.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
That's a good friend.
I was going to say, how did you have that kind of pull with Catherine Bigelow
I didn't
to
have
do
that kind of pull.
You just were like, fuck it.
The vibe on that set was really cool when we were a family, and she was so cool. And I think it just made sense because Rainbow is Rainbow, and he's just really cool. And of course, once you get in his energy field, you're feeling him. You know, you're
100%.
Yeah,
but that's a good friend.
Yeah,
that is a good friend.
Rainbow and Bojesse, man, how is that movie not made?
Well, not made yet.
Yeah.
Rain and I, just very quickly. So when I first moved to LA,
how old were you?
17.
Shit.
I just graduated high school. I was 17 years old. It was 1988, and I got this job. I think it was called the Sports Connection. It was on Sepulveda.
Oh, fuck yeah, it was. Yeah, I remember that.
So I had a modeling career when I was in high school. And then I got, some commercials. They got me into the union, the Screen Actors Guild. And then I kind of set myself up to graduate high school and move to LA and become an actor. Springing forward, I get to LA and I say, I'm not going to model anymore. I'm an actor. I'm not a model.
I love it.
So I just threw my modeling career under the bus. And I had a pretty decent modeling career that was paying, decent. Like I was working, but I didn't want to do it anymore. So I got this job at the Sports Connection, and Rainbow worked there.
Oh.
And I didn't know him.
Yeah.
So I was the new guy, and I'm working the receptionist, and Rainbow was doing the reception too. And he and I became fast friends, like so quickly.
Yep.
He was going to high school. His mom, Kitty, was working as a script supervisor in Married with Children.
Yep.
And, very quickly, he's like, hey, dude, you're an actor. I got something fun we can go do. My mom works on this really cool show. I'll take you down to set. And that's when I met Dave Faustino.
Yep.
And my whole world opened up.
Dave and Rainbow are the nucleus of this whole family tree of friendships. Really,
part of that group was Robert Gavin, who was also in Pump of the Volume.
Yeah.
And is that how you ended up working in Pump of the Volume?
Probably. Let me think about that for a second, because we were all hanging out. It was Robert Gavin, Brian Austin Green, Corky, Baltazar Getty, Jenny Lewis, Soleil Moonfry, Dave Faustino, Rainbow, me. And I think that I was just trying to find opportunities in TV and film, and Robert got cast in the film.
Yeah. By the way, if you ever do watch Pump of the Volume, because usually there's a lot of background people moving around. There's a great scene when Christian Slater is going to his mailbox. And do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh my God.
He's going to his mailbox and Bo is just by himself standing on this pillar. Yeah. And not only were you an extra, I'm going to shock you now.
Yeah.
Your cream Audi that you had at the time was also an extra in the movie.
Wow.
Yeah.
Brother,
so funny.
I love you. Because
we go back a long way.
We go back a long way. Yeah. That Audi was the car that I bought with the modeling money in high school, that I packed that thing up. Put my surfboards on top, and I lived in that car for 3 months when I got to LA. Literally,
couch surfing type of thing.
I was living in my car.
Yeah, really,
for 3 months. Like no couch surfing. I didn't know anybody.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and then I finally did some couch surfing, and then I finally got an apartment. Which, by the way, remember the apartment I had?
Hazeltine.
Yeah.
And Dave Faustino, who's come up a lot on the show. He's been a guest on the show. Look, Dave's one of my best friends in the whole world.
Yeah.
He's like my brother.
He was our first guest.
Well, but he was our first guest.
Yeah.
He's everyone's first.
I don't know if you know this.
Totally. Yeah.
You were there the very first time I met Dave, and it was just you, me, and Dave. Really? So I went into some audition, and you were there for the same audition.
Really?
And now this was the kind of the thing to do in the 90s, is if you were like a struggling actor and you were going in on an audition, and you had a friend who was like a working, recognizable actor, you might ask them to come along with you.
Right.
So it might bring a little more heat to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I had gone on this audition. You were there on the same audition. I can't imagine that we were auditioning for the same thing, but it must have been something.
What was it? Do you remember?
No idea.
Okay.
But that
So
was
curious.
the very first time I met Dave. I do remember that.
Wow.
And you know, were talking to me and you were with Dave, and I'm like, oh, I mean, I recognized him from Married with Children. And yeah, that was the very, very first time.
That's how you met Dave? See, you're bringing back my recollection of this, though.
Yeah.
It's amazing, the memory, because I have a pretty good memory.
Yeah.
And when you talk about this stuff,
yeah,
it takes me there.
You said you put your surfboards on top of your car.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
did that help get your role on Point Break?
It did.
You surfed.
There's a great story. But
right.
you want to lead into this?
No, you go.
Okay, so speaking of auditions, Point Break was called Riders on the Storm.
That's right.
And our mutual friend, Brian Austin Green, had the audition for this role of Gromit, role I ended up being cast in.
By the way, I couldn't see him. I love Brian, but I couldn't see him playing that role.
I appreciate that. And apparently it wasn't meant for him, and that's great. So it's great for both of us because he ended up getting 90who10 right after that, and it all worked out. So anyway, long story short, he says to me one day, I'm sitting with him, I've got this audition. Will you drive with me to the Lantana Center, on the west side? At the end of the day, I've got the last appointment on this thing. They can't find the actor for this role, and I think apparently the thing starts soon, but I don't understand it. It's surfers and they rob banks, and I don't understand this dialogue. Can you break this down? You're a surfer, and just can you drive my car and run lines with me? So I drive him to this audition, and we get to the audition, and I've got all the dialogue downloaded now because I've been warming him up for this thing. And I'm a surfer. I've got the beanie. I've got long blonde hair, the flannel. I look like the NorCal kind of Santa Cruz kid.
That was your look back then.
That was my vibe, right?
Writer.
I was like, okay. I'm like, this is cool. It'd be cool if I had the audition. So we go up. I've got his keys. We walk up there. I sit on the ground. And I'm waiting for him. I'm just kind of like hanging out. And he goes in. And Brian used to bite his nails. I don't know if he still does that. Do you remember that? He had that kind of like nervous thing. Hey,
vaguely,
that kind of thing. Yeah. Love him. But we know our friends, right?
Of course.
So he came out and he was doing that nail biting thing. And I was like, oh, it didn't go well. Because I know Brian. This is my friend. I can tell. And I'm like, all right, I guess it didn't go well. So I go to stand up and the casting director, Rick Pagano, walks out and says, are you next? And I said, no. And he goes, are you an actor? I said, yeah. And he goes, you're next.
I love it.
So I didn't even stop to think about the fact that this is my friend's audition.
That's awesome, though.
I just said, Brian, I'll be right back. And I walked right by him. He goes, bro, you can't do that. And I had his keys. I said, I'll be right back. And I walked right into the casting office.
Love it.
Rick Pagano, who's the casting director, hands me sides, the scene. And he says, take a second. And I said, no, it's cool. I think I've got it.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, you've got it. Okay. Sit there and let's see what you got, basically. So instead of sitting, I stood on the chair.
I love it.
And I just went into this. You drop down the pit, man. It's 25 feet straight down. Your balls, man.
Yeah.
Your balls are about this big, and the whole thing is freaking roaring, right?
Yeah.
Pushing you forward like, I don't know, man. Like,
you're taking me right
you're
back.
a hooter. I'm on a freight train or something.
Yeah.
Man.
Oh my God. I love
So I do the whole thing off book in the vibe. And he goes, hold on a second. He leaves the room. He comes back 2-3 minutes later with Catherine Bigelow. And he goes, do that again. So I did it again. She goes, you're hired.
Oh my God.
And that's how I got Point Break.
There with the part.
Fucking
left
awesome.
with the part.
Oh,
did you leave
God.
with Brian as well?
I did. I came out. And he goes, dude, what are you doing? I go, I got it. He goes, no, bro, that's not how it works. I go, I got it.
That's
and literally,
awesome.
like my voicemail was just loaded up with voicemails from because we didn't have, cell phones then, with messages saying, where did this appointment come from? You start tomorrow. Like, I need you to call me. They want to close a deal now.
And you're like, you get no money.
Well, right. Well, it was literally scale. Plus 10. I think they negotiated plus 10%. But it ended up being 12 weeks of work that was extended to 8 months. Because James Cameron was the executive producer on the film, and they just kept shooting and shooting and shooting. Oh, awesome. And it was a 200-page script that kept shooting stuff. So I made money on that.
That's great.
Yeah, but that was the Brian. Me.
But when you hear the story of the audition, now you're going back to my question of how did you have the balls to get Rainbow his role.
Right.
Think about how he stormed the audition.
Totally.
No
They're
big
like,
deal.
oh,
I stormed the audition. Throw my friend in the movie.
This guy knows the real deal.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
it's kind of,
I mean, in retrospect, I guess my impulse was just like, oh, if you think I'm the guy, sure, I'll come in and read. And then they gave me the role. But I mean, I earned it. I had to do something in the room. Yeah. And I tell this story often because it's a really fun story to tell. But like, I do remember Brian being upset about it, but then, right after that, he started 90210.
He did all right. Brian did okay.
Brian
I think
is
it's like,
doing great.
If you're going to lose, and I lasted in the acting world for 2 seconds because I have rejection sensitivity dysphoria for sure. That is not my bag. I got way too close to some good roles, and I'm like, fuck this.
Yeah.
So the fact that if you see a role go to a friend,
Yeah.
I do think it's almost like there's a way to make that a good thing and a positive experience,
I love it.
as opposed to like, fuck, I lost it to that asshole.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it was a very competitive thing, but like, I loved being able to like see all my friends do well. I mean, that inspired me.
Yeah.
That, I've always been sort of fearless, not reckless, but fearless, and always leaned into opportunities and always been disciplined. But like, I had to move here and figure it out.
Yeah.
And it was really inspiring to kind of be part of a community of kids that were doing it, our peer group, and then learning from that, and then feeling comfortable being uncomfortable in that space, and then winning my own opportunities and building my own career.
But that took you to a whole nother level. I mean, we were guys bouncing around, some of us were working, some of us were on TV shows, but now you're in this, a
Huge
major movie with major movie stars.
Yeah.
Keanu Reeves, Patrick Swayze.
Yeah.
I mean,
and a really quite frankly, the plot line's pretty fucking interesting too. It's an interesting movie.
Yeah. But Patrick Swayze, what was that like working with him?
So, Ghost was in the movie theaters when I started working on that film. And at the time, Patrick Swayze was already a huge movie star, but that was like the biggest movie out there, and people were loving Swayze, and, it was like him and Demi Moore and Whoopi, and like, that was, so everyone was clamoring to get like, a look at Swayze. And so I'm working with this guy, literally
playing his younger brother
6 days a week, for months, playing his younger brother, bonding with him, getting attention from this guy, getting mentorship. It was the most incredible experience. My most, like, he was my brother. He was probably like my most sincere, meaningful mentor that I've had thus far in the 35 years.
That's great.
Was he a good dude? He seemed like he was.
Yeah, he seemed like
such a great dude.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a
Dirty
great
Dancing
actor.
is one of my favorite movies
Great
because
actor.
I'm a girl.
Great
Dirty
actor.
Dancing.
I'm
that
part of the
special
Outsiders. But
yeah. Dude, really everything,
Roadhouse.
I love Roadhouse. I love Roadhouse.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too. I mean, everything he's done has been fun to watch. But yeah, Swayze, he's a movie star.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they don't make him like that anymore.
Swayze, what a name.
So, I know. Oh, the best. But now you're in this giant movie.
Yeah.
What's that like, bouncing around Hollywood and you're in this huge
People
movie?
know you now.
Yeah.
Right. So I went from auditioning for one-line roles to auditioning for the series regular leads, and primarily like every film with every important filmmaker that had a role in it for, a guy who was like, I guess what was like 20, 21, 22, like an early 20 something.
Yep.
I was in the mix on that thing, going straight to producers, meeting the director, and taking meetings with studio executives, and for the most part, knowing what I was doing, but also kind of in retrospect, like not really knowing what I was doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, a lot of times it didn't go my way, and I learned from that, and then it did.
Listen,
also,
go my way. I scrolled your IMDb page.
Yeah.
You did it went your way a few times.
I've done all right.
By the way, Bojesse has like over 60 acting credits on
That's amazing.
IMDb.
Okay, so what outside, I'm
Thanks,
sorry,
man.
because I didn't do as much research as you did.
Yeah.
What are some of the key roles outside of Point Break?
Sure. I appreciate that question. So I went through like a renaissance where I came back into the business when I was 40, which is about 13 years ago, and really kind of did a full court push on my acting career. So what helped kick that off was I was invited to do the remake of Point Break. They did a reimagined $100 million remake at Warner Brothers.
Oh, wow.
And so they brought me in to be the FBI director on that one. And we shot that in Berlin. And that kind of jump-started some excitement for me and with other people, kind of getting me back into the audition circuit. And the name was floating around, the whole thing. But some of the notable things I've been able to do is I did True Detective on HBO, season 3, which was, award-winning True Detective opposite Mahershala Ali and our boy Stephen Dorff. So that was pretty incredible. That was one of my, probably the biggest feather in my cap that I could remember since Point Break. And then I did another show with Dorf called Deputy on Fox,
Yes.
which was recently. That was 2020.
I remember that. It was not on for a long time.
We did a season. We did 12 episodes.
But it did have some buzz.
Yeah. And then I got canceled. And then I did NCIS Los Angeles. And now I'm doing a show for BET called The Family Business.
Oh, that's awesome.
We're in our 5th season.
Tell us about that. Oh my gosh,
congratulations. I love that. I love that. So kind of full circle. So
And
what were you doing in between?
Well, a lot of things.
I know some of them because that's when I remember you, because you got into kind of the event space and like promotion and nightlife for a while.
I did that for a while. So going back to my 30-year-old son.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it answers these questions. It justifies why I, deviated from the plan, which was always just to be, an actor and an artist and do the thing. So after Point Break, I had, a series of like I did some smaller movies. Then I did a small role in a bigger movie. Then I did, recurring role on, a TV show. And then I did a guest star thing. I bounced around, but it was never quite enough to kind of be what I needed it to be while raising a child.
I vaguely remember you having a kid.
Because I was 20 when I had Jesse, my oldest son.
Yes.
It was hard. Thanks. Yeah.
Vaguely
takes one to know one.
Like you're talking about it, it's like coming back to me a little bit.
So one of the reasons I kind of, I don't say pulled away from the friend group, but life pulled me away.
Yeah.
So the movie was cool. And like I reemerged because I did the movie for 8 months, Point Break. And then I came back, and was like tapping into my friendships again. And then I met a gal and then she got pregnant and then I was a father.
Yeah.
And so very quickly it got really real and really hard.
Sure.
So then I was just trying to grab acting roles and do whatever I could. So there was probably 10 years where I was like,
survival mode.
But I was working as an actor, but it just wasn't enough. Like I couldn't get, I was like, this, that. And it really, it kind of broke my spirit a little bit. Not being a dad, but like the acting career. Sure. So I ended up stopping acting for like a little while. And then I got into nightclub promotions and marketing because I was like, well, I've always known people. I'm always like shaking hands and kissing babies. I know people. So I'm like, all right, I got to make some cash. I got to raise my kid. I got to do something. And I got into that world for 10, 12 years. And, I did my thing. So, we can talk more about that. Less interesting to me.
LA is very much a nightlife. And a lot of these people were part of that scene. So it was kind of like, the acting part of it. And thank you for being pretty candid and vulnerable because that's a hard life. And I thought a lot of people think like, oh, you get this big break and then off you go to the races. And that's not always the case. Sometimes it's like you keep having to go up the same hill.
Yeah. Thanks for saying that because it was, so like I've got an audition, I've got a meaningful thing and I'm like, okay, but I've got to, either I've got my kid with me. Someone's got to watch my kid while I study the thing, or I got to drive to the thing, or I got to bring him, or I got to walk in. I got to explain how I got to hold my kid on my lap while I got to do that. It was nutty.
Yeah.
Really nutty. And I was very involved. And so that was really hard, but I was able to chip away at it and build a body of work. So I still sustained for like 10 years until I was like 30, 32, an acting career. Then I quit for a little while, got into nightclub promotions and marketing, stabilized financially. And then I got disenchanted with that. I was like, what am I doing? This is not me. This is not the energy. This is low frequency for me. I felt, I feel like I'm taking. I need to give. I need to grow. I need to flow. And by the way, my name is Bo.
The thing he hasn't touched on yet is then you start teaching acting.
Yeah.
And when Jessica's talking about kind of the struggle, I mean, that's basically it. People come out and you just see people who are successful, and Bo has had success, but there's also a lot of struggle that goes into it, you know?
Lot.
And not only teaching the craft of acting, which he knows a lot about, but he's able to talk to these people, I'm assuming your students, about the grind. Not just the craft, but the grind.
Yeah, there's craft and career related to that. And thank you for saying that, because that sets up kind of the next journey for me. Like, once I felt really maxed out on the nightclub promotions thing, and I was like, I got to change my life. I threw myself back into acting class. And I left out a big portion of how I studied and who I studied with when I was younger. But basically, I knew I needed to get back into the craft and find myself again in the work. And that's when I reconnected with Rainbow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Because Rainbow's like, I have the class for you. And it was Sandy Marshall's Meisner repetition class. I'm sure he's spoken about Sandy. And I'd never studied the Meisner technique before, the repetition exercise. It was beautiful and cathartic and creatively therapeutic. And I really fell in love with the craft again and found myself in that work. And so that inspired me to put a group of friends together and anyone else who wanted to be part of something special. And that's what got me going weekly in coaching actors.
But even before that, just going back, I don't know if you'd call it a workshop or you and Danny Nucci, who's a well-known actor.
Yeah.
He was, I mean, Danny Nucci's in one of my favorite movies, The Rock. Yeah. And actually, it's funny. I now see him around because of, we have kids the same age. So I see him at some stuff. But
Danny's the man.
You and him had like a workshop for young actors way back. I mean, I don't even know if you call it coaching, but just for people who are in kind of like your circle to come out and stretch their legs a little bit.
This is crazy, dude, because you're an OG Loke. You know this stuff. Let me say something right now. It was called the Dojo.
Okay. Oh, wow.
And it was at, I want to say it was Bobby Jacoby's house. It was
very possibly. We had Bobby on the show.
Did you?
Yeah, a couple weeks ago.
Yeah. It's so great. I miss him.
He's fucking hilarious.
Yeah.
He's great.
I haven't seen him in so long. I'd love to see him.
He has a place. We can all go hang out. There's bands that play.
Okay. Let's go.
Let's just all show up one day and tell him to meet us.
For Bobby, we're coming to you for sure. And we're bringing the crew.
I love
Outlaw Posse.
Outlaw Posse. We talked about Outlaw Posse.
I thought you knew. We'll go.
We talked about it all.
We'll get everybody.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the short of it is we had this thing and Danny put it together. It was Danny's thing, Danny Nucci. And Danny Nucci was like, I don't know, maybe he was 1 or 2 years older than me even. And I was like the older guy in the group, but Danny was a year or two old.
Just real quick.
Yeah.
Danny's probably his best known role is he was Leonardo DiCaprio's friend in Titanic.
Correct.
Yeah. Fabrizio.
Yes.
Or something like that.
He's amazing. Yeah. If you see his face, you know, I mean, he's an amazing actor. He's a wonderful human being. But Danny organized this thing and it was somebody's like karate dojo. And we called it the Dojo. And it was once a week. And I remember, I mean, literally, this is crazy. We're talking about this because it was everybody that we've been talking about. Okay. And then it would be like Toby.
Toby Maguire. Yep.
You know,
probably Leo too, Leonardo.
Yeah. I mean, it's probably Leo.
Yeah.
I've got some Leo stories going back to that time too, but I don't know if I remember seeing Leo then, but maybe, because they probably,
I was thinking Toby was there, you know,
for sure, because those
Kevin
guys are
Connolly and all those.
Because Kevin was in the mix too. Yep. But like that, so that whole dojo experience was for me very kindred because it was like actors really working off each other and finding creativity, like. We didn't really know what we're doing. I think Danny had a couple exercises and then we would just piggyback off that and build some things that would turn into something creative. And it inspired us and we showed up for that thing every week. And sometimes we'd move it around if that dojo wasn't there.
That thing's legendary. I mean, it still comes up in conversation.
It's amazing that you remember that. I remember it fondly. Yeah. So that, and my heart was really committed to the craft, to your point. And so back then I was like, mentoring myself and anybody younger who needed a little encouragement and support. I was there to be like, go for it, man. Fearless. I love it. You got this. You can do this. I love it.
I'm just wondering what it is with men and dojos. I don't know why.
Right? It's the challenge.
I love it. So it was kind of like this organic community that you guys kind of made, and it was a mentorship type of thing, but completely organically created.
100%. And at that time too, I mean, if you want to get a little bit into some sort of folklore and some Hollywood, names,
that's what we want to do.
Appreciate that. Yeah. So I'm working at the Sports Connection. I'm running around with everybody. We're doing the dojo thing with everybody. Auditioning for one-line roles. This is pre-Point Break. Shelly Winters, 2-time Academy Award winner, Shelly Winters, comes into the Sports Connection. I don't know who she is. And at the time, I'm also studying at Stella Adler Conservatory Theater with Stella Adler herself, who was a family friend of my dad. And somehow he knew her and gave me her number and said, if you're going to move to LA, you got to call this lady and be in her class. And she was reluctant because she's like, another actor moving to LA. We'll see if he shows up. Anyway, long story short, I'm studying with Stella at the Stella Adler Conservatory Theater. So Mark Ruffalo, me, Benicio del Toro,
of course,
a few notables in that class.
Yes.
This is 1988, Stella Adler Conservatory Theater. Stella's teaching the class. Then I meet Shelly. Shelly walks in and she changes my life because she speaks my language. She's somebody I'm working with says, hey, you need to meet this lady. She's the person you need to talk to. I'm like another woman who looked like Stella, basically, at the time. Forgive me in advance. I'm like another old broad from New York who's got like a rough attitude because I was kind of over and maxed out with Stella because she was always on me, aggressive, like tough love. And so there's Shelly saying, so you want to be an actor? Why do you want to be an actor? And I'm giving her, it's like, because my heart wants it. My heart wants.
That's awesome.
I'm like, who are you?
Yeah.
Because there's no internet. I don't know who she is.
Yeah.
I've never watched any movie at that point. I'm like, who are you? You remind me of Stella. I'm like, you're bugging me, basically. She's like, all right. She wrote 3 things down on a piece of paper. Industry, imagination, intelligence. I want you to call my number once you figure out what those 3 words mean to you. And then I'm going to invite you somewhere special. And I'm like, where are you going to invite me? She's like, you'll find out. Just do this first. So I'm literally like, do I do this or do I just throw it away? But my friend's like, you got it.
Yeah.
This legendary Shelly Winters.
Yeah.
Anyway, long story short, because I don't know how much time we have, but there's lots of stories.
You could come back for series 2.
Yeah. So I'm interpreting these 3 words. I bring this stuff home. I'm like, imagination, industry, intelligence. Like, what does she want from me? I'm supposed to work backwards leading up to those words and tell her what it means. So she's teaching me a discipline in terms of interpreting what that word means and why I'd want to say it or feel it or lean into whatever it means.
Yeah.
And so I figure out what I think are the answers and I call her, I express what I think is the answer. She goes, I like your answer. Show up at this location, 2 p.m. next Wednesday. Don't be late. So it turns out, and again, there's no internet, so I have no idea. I'm 17 years old.
Yeah.
And it's the Actors Studio.
Oh, wow.
So it's the Actors Studio West. And it's on DeLong Prairie. And this is like, it's a house converted into a studio. There's rake seating and it's a legit thing, but it's literally the Actors Studio. You can't pay to be there.
Right.
You have to be invited.
Right.
You can only observe if you're invited. And if you're asked to audition, it usually takes 3 to 6 to 8 times if you get it at all.
Yeah.
So now she's giving me the invite to observe. There's something that she sees in me and I'm watching all of her work, but I showed up late to this next thing.
That's so a thing I would do.
Yeah. And so I walk in to this dark theater. I'll tell this story because it's kind of powerful. It changed the whole way I looked and approached acting. And so I walk into this dark space and there's a little bit of a spotlight and I see a woman on her sit bones, and she's what appears to be giving birth. She's pushing and making all the noises, and she's going through labor. And then there's a woman sitting in front of her saying, push, push, and it's Shelly. I can make out the figure and I can hear the voice and it's quiet. You can hear a pin drop, except there's this intensity. And all this is happening for like 20 minutes as I find my seat. And literally a woman gives birth to a baby on the stage. And then the lights come up and, you could feel it in the air. It's silent and Shelly stands up and turns and faces all the rake seating. And I look around and there's people are just like, what's going on here? Mm-hmm. She goes, that's what acting's all about. So this woman but I walked in late, so there was no context for me.
Yeah.
And so I thought there was a woman giving birth. And I had just walked into this weird sort of like community of people. Yeah. So I stuck around and then I had questions and she just gave me answers. And then she took me in and became my mentor.
That's awesome.
There's so much more to the story.
Yeah.
But so I got into kind of the Strasberg method thing very quickly thereafter and incorporated a lot of that stuff in the way I approach my work. But
that's awesome.
Originally when you came out here, you were just like, okay, I'll do some acting, and then really fell in love with the craft. So it was almost like reverse engineering a little bit.
Yeah. What's interesting, and you can all relate to this, is like when you're a young actor or when you think you want to be in TV and film, it's because you're watching a lot of film, you're watching a lot of TV, and you're falling in love with actors and you want to emanate those favorite people. You really do. So like we got to watch so many wonderful actors, coming up. Like our generation, the people that were our peers were that were there to kind of show us what really it was about. So once I got here, it dawned on me that like, this is a real thing and you really have to put yourself into it. And so I was all in and wanted to learn everything I could in terms of craft, but how you could put that in front of the camera so the camera would record that beautiful truth.
And that's where the best actors know, and the people where you kind of separate the men from the boys, for lack of a better term, or the cream, or how the cream rises to the top, because there was a lot of people in our kind of generation, our circle, who were 14, 15, 16, good looking, handsome, had the part, had the nice hair, had the look in the face. And they ended up, working a little bit.
Yeah.
But then they reached this point, 20, 21, 22. They're no longer these like fresh-faced teenagers. They're turning into young men or young women. And now you had to be an actor.
Well, I mean, and then you look at somebody who was around at that time, and Leo DiCaprio. I mean, that kind of talent really comes along in a generation.
Well, here's the thing about
Juggernaut, totally.
Like the talent that he has with everything he does and how he commits.
Here's the thing about Leo,
I agree.
too. And, you see pictures of him on yachts with models and stuff.
Yeah.
But he was a guy who never stopped. He never stopped.
Yeah.
A lot of guys, for whatever reason, you had a baby, our friend Rainbow got distracted by other things, partying, hanging out.
Yeah.
Whatever it was, he never stopped. If he had some success, he never rested on it.
Well,
he kept building,
not just
he kept
that,
working, he kept going.
The fact that he could access, he had such access to that. Because I don't think, look, we can talk about acting because I went to American Academy of Dramatic Arts. Like I wanted to do the whole thing. I was very committed at a time in my life. And then I went, you know what? I'm not that person. I can see myself doing something else.
When you say access, what do you mean?
I mean that his emotions are so available to him.
All right. I thought you meant it in a different way. It is 90who10. So when you say access, I'm thinking he knew somebody.
Resources.
Once he figured out how he could tap into it, he tapped into it.
Leo's a good dude. I know Leo.
He's
a friend of mine. I like him.
Dude. Yeah. And you know who loves him too is Will. I am.
Yep.
So Will, we've talked a lot about Will on this because of ballistics, and Will got, discovered at ballistics.
Got to start there,
And he talks about it. But Will and Leo actually went to high school together. Do you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Oh, yeah.
In Boyle Heights?
Boyle Heights. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, they actually, Will ended up busing to the Palisades, but wherever he went to school before he did that, he was in school with Leo.
Wow.
Yeah. And he talks about it in the ballistics documentary.
I mean, LA is
cool.
a very bizarre, big, small town.
It is.
And once you are here, even if you move here from
I'm a
somewhere
transplant.
else, you will find some niche or some group. And it's I think that's why people also are attracted to it. And you can either sink or swim. You can either make good friendships and realize the worth of them, or it's like too much, or it's too cliquey, or it's hard to break in. Because it's not that access isn't available to everyone.
Right.
I feel so blessed to have right out of high school tapped the friend group that I had and still have.
Yep.
I'm here now for that very reason.
And that's it. And that's the cool thing about it. We had a really strong bond. And Bojesse, he's not a guy that I talk to on a day-to-day basis. I've run into, we have this strong connection from early on.
Yeah.
We were part of this group.
Yeah.
We've run into each other a few times, and you never lose that I don't know, this
it's all
bond.
love. It's all love, man.
I totally get it. And that is why I was such a tomboy, because I always loved that camaraderie that men had that teenage girls did not necessarily.
By the way,
have.
So I texted him, can you please will you do my podcast or our podcast? And he's like, I'm there. You just tell me when and where.
It's my podcast. I was on ET.
You were.
I have one question for you though, because this is a funny thing.
Okay.
Have you ever gone to Point Break Live?
Yeah.
What is that?
Oh my God.
Yes.
It's the best. I've been 3 times.
It's amazing.
Oh my God. I don't even know about Point Break Live.
It's they I don't know if they're still doing it, but basically they took it around on tour, and they would perform Point Break with audience members and then a couple other key actors at these random bars.
That's awesome.
And it was absolutely hysterical. And the best part about it was you found out how little Keanu Reeves had spoken lines. And he had like 4.
He has it's like peppered dialogue.
Yeah.
So basically, if you go to the play, the show, it's like a live interactive kind of, off-Broadway type of thing.
No, this is like 15 years ago, more than that.
Yeah.
I mean,
it ran for a while. I don't think it's running anymore.
I don't either. It was great.
But if you were in the audience, you could get cast by audience participation as the Johnny Utah Keanu Reeves role. And then you're in it. Performing for your friends and whoever's in the audience, and they put you through a whole gauntlet. And it's basically
sometimes people are drunk.
It's a comedy. I mean, it's a dark, comedy, and it's super fun.
That's exciting.
It was a great thing that they did. And that really was like the first interactive theater that I had been to, you know?
So what's cool about that is, so that thing ran, and actually because of the success of Point Break Live, got the attention of the producers who ended up acquiring the rights to Point Break and making the reimagined sequel to it.
Yeah.
Because of the success of it. And so we all went, by we, I mean like Lori Petty and John Philbin, who's in the movie, and Peter Iliff, who wrote Point Break. We would all go and like support Point Break Live, and became really close friends with all those people because they were so creative and did such a good job with it.
I love that you know about it.
Yeah, no, it's great.
Such an homage, honestly.
By the way, as you're naming the people, and I have to say, you know, rest in peace to Chris Pettit. You know, God, what a shame.
Yeah. Chris. Okay, so let's talk about Chris for a sec, because what a beautiful kid.
Chris Pettit, for those who don't know, was one of my favorite films is Don't Tell Mom the Babysitter's Dead.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. But also in Point Break.
I read for that. Yeah. I did. I did. Yeah. I'm like, did I read for that role? I forget. No, it was maybe the brother. He was the younger brother in that.
It was who was it? Keith Coogan who played the brother.
Yeah, and I love Keith too. I see Keith all the time. But I think I read for the role that Keith got. But so Chris Pettit. So I met Chris Pettit in another acting class. It was Kevin McDermott's Hollywood Creative Studio for Young Actors or something like that. But Thomas Ian Nicholas was in that. Chris Pettit was in that. But I met Chris Pettit because in his first class, he was paired with me to do like an older brother, younger brother scene. It's like a high school thing, and then a young kid who's going through some stuff. And then, you know, we ended up doing Point Break. And then after that, obviously, he had some challenges, and the rest is, you know, history, as they say. But man, I had that special connection to him, and a lot of people did. I mean, you know, he was loved.
Yeah, he was
for sure. We missed him.
LA in the 90s was the best, man. It really was. I'm not gonna lie. I as a woman, I got lucky. Like, I had a great time unscathed. I don't have any too terrible stories. Good. I mean, some typical 90s shit, but nothing like, you know, we all have Me Too stories. Anyway, I digress. But I remember, you know, you were not necessarily part of the Brent Bolthouse crew, but you were.
Kind of was.
Like, I mean.
No, but I was. I was.
For people listening in Iowa, Brent Bolthouse, like,
so biggest and LA still kind
promoter, of the biggest LA club promoter in LA.
He does all the after parties at Coachella that you see on Instagram. The 944 party.
Owns all the bungalows.
Owns all the bungalows. And had his own group of people that he kind of came up with in that world.
There was no bottle service. There was none of this. Let me give you $1,000 and get a table.
It ruined everything.
It was you had to know. There was a scene. There was a vibe. You had to know something.
It was very familial, and there were times, you know, there, like, I hate to say this, but you didn't go out on the weekends.
No. You went out on a Thursday or a Tuesday,
Monday nights at Joseph's.
Totally.
I could still tell you the night.
Charlie's.
I could tell you the lineup.
Roxbury,
3 of Clubs,
Tuesday, and then the
Saturday Night Fever,
Daddy's
was
my favorite bar. Fucking love that bar.
I mean, that was a special time.
Yep,
really.
Jones,
the
Martini Lounge. I mean, there was a different thing to do, and so I knew Bojesse. I'm like, fuck. But you know what's funny? I was in and out of it. I was 15 to 25, and I was.
That's a long time, Jessica.
Well, I wasn't really till 25, but I had panic attacks. I mean, but I was like in that around. It was probably more like 5.
But
like
it was
15 to 20.
different then, because it was safe in a way, as much as it could be. Like, you had brothers and sisters because people were looking out for you. It wasn't, I mean, look, sure, there's predators everywhere, but it wasn't predatorial in a way where it probably is now. Let's not even go there about now, but like, that was a special time with people that knew and loved each other.
You know, I never got super into drugs, but I very many times ended up in the basement playing cards with some Japanese business.
Oh, wow.
I love it.
Yeah.
Mousetrap, like some random.
Mousetrap. That was a famous one that was.
On Fairfax.
Yeah. They ran that a lot.
I got into some trouble.
But again, that's when it was like cool and fun. Like, I couldn't even imagine being out in that world, anymore.
No way.
No.
We didn't have to worry about fentanyl and stuff like that. I mean, every weekend there was a party at somebody's house up in the hills.
Yeah.
You just drive around and find a party.
And that was fun.
Yeah, it was.
You know what's funny too? I mean, a couple of things that are going through my mind.
I miss being young.
And I remember you.
Oh, I'm glad. Thank you. That
makes
me feel good.
A couple of things that are going through my mind as you're talking is, you know, as we've had different people on this show, it's like a lot of these same names come up, even though you maybe not are like putting it together that, you know, Bojesse is friends with this person or knew that person. But the other thing too is that's kind of what the show is about is that as we're talking about these people and you're saying some famous names like Eden Sassoon, Scotty Kahn, but yet, I mean, you were a little bit older than us, but it's still what teenagers were doing when they're 15, 16, 17, 18, 19 years old. There was a group of us all just kind of hanging out, having a good time.
Yeah.
You know, the thing is, the day job was a little different. We weren't working at 7-Eleven. We were going on auditions. We were starring in Point Break. We were being in movies. We were doing other things.
Yeah.
I actually realized, like, in my 20s, I fell way more into the music side, like the music scene. Like, I was hanging out with all the musicians and, like, radio folk. I mean, I just that's the path I ended up going.
That's what called to you. And that's, so I totally get that too. I was just going to say that, you know, because the show is very focused on sort of like the stories and what it was like, but also kind of what's happening with those people now. And so it's nice because I feel very blessed to have sort of gotten to fast track into that environment where we're talking about 90who10, right? Your show's a spinoff of that.
Right.
But the idea is that, like, you know, there's a way that people navigated life coming of age in that zip code.
Yeah.
And then to be able to share these wonderful stories that aren't surface-based stories. They're meaningful, you know, and people have evolved and done wonderful things, and friendships are cultivated and have come out of that. I just feel lucky that being a transplant, I got kind of jumped into that cool gang and still can maintain those friendships and have this conversation.
And that's the thing, you know, it's like on the surface, there's this kind of glitz and glamour. And I'm sure coming from Pacifica and coming down here and, you know, now you're in this whole other world, there is a little bit of like, where the fuck am I now? But as you settle in, as you settle in, there is real relationships, real people, real feelings, real memories, you know? And it's funny, we've been talking with Bo for almost an hour now.
Yeah.
And I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
I know. Totally.
And the other thing,
we all need to go have lunch.
Well, the thing I'm going to tell you is, as we've had on Bobby and a couple other people, at some point, I'm going to make us do this. We're going to have a round table. And we're going to get a whole bunch of the crew together.
It'll be me and a bunch of dudes.
Yeah,
like
you
always.
and a bunch of dudes. Yeah. And we're going to go a little even deeper.
I'd love that.
Yeah.
Even my husband knows that about me with his group of friends. It's always me and a bunch of dudes.
Yeah.
So just to wrap up a little bit, you told us about the show.
Yeah.
Remind us what the name of the show is again.
So the current show is called The Family Business. It's on BET. There's a season 5 that comes out. Well, the schedule is a little different now because of the strikes. So I think, where are we right now? We're in January. I think March, April. So spring, you'll see a season 5 of The Family Business on BET. But I think it premieres on BET. And then it goes to Netflix.
I love it.
Which is great.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
Especially now that they sorted out the streaming. Well, I guess that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, no, actually they that made things better for them. So everyone's feeling really good about that. Yeah, so things are good. Can I plug where you can find me?
Yeah, please.
Yes,
okay,
please.
great.
Yeah, go ahead.
So go to BojesseChristopher.com.
Yeah.
For your full service needs.
I love it.
Bojesse and Christopher.
No, seriously, listen. Honestly,
Thanks.
I'm gonna take it a step further. If you're out there and you are interested in pursuing acting and you want to learn from a guy who's, you know, knocked around, who knows what it takes to make it in this business, but also knows the craft of acting, hit up Bo. I mean, and is also an amazing human being.
Yeah. Obviously.
Thank you both.
Thank you so much for coming. And also, I love that you're a dad and all of this wonderful stuff that's happened in your life in the past couple of years.
Appreciate it.
Anyway,
I love you.
I love you, brother.
Love you.
I love you too. It's so nice. It's so much love. And it's so great to like reminisce with everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are fantastic and just such a great ball of energy and good vibes. And thank you for being vulnerable and all that good stuff that Brene Brown says. Thank you guys so much for joining us for another episode of 90who10. Just to remind you, it does matter. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, send all your peers to us, and let us entertain you with all these stories from the 90s. Like, subscribe. Thanks.
Awesome.
I like that. That was actually good. That was clean and to the point.
Yeah, there you go.
Kind of crushed that one.
There we go.